Hi and welcome to the 14th episode of Speak Up by Smiley movement. I'm joined by some wonderful guests here to talk all about World Earth Day. So, to start at the beginning, why do you guys think World Earth Day is an important thing to celebrate?
It's when it's at its conception 50 years ago, it was such a radical thing to do and affected policy, and we need to keep that momentum going because there's still a lot of work to do. So it's a good reminder that there's still a lot of work to be done on the environmental scene.
Yeah, I think it's amazing because it genuinely has global reach, which is important these days. And, looking at what they do, they provide all these toolkits and advice and inspiration for people to raise money. And as you say, Pierre, looking back to when it started in 1970, 72, it is amazing that people were so foresightful to say we need to start looking after the planet. It's a pity it's taking so long, but I think it's a wonderful organisation and an inspiration to so many.
And what do each of you guys' organisations do to be part of the solution?
So I'm with Just Stop Oil, and so we are a direct action civil disobedience campaign that has won its demand of no new oil and gas licenses in the UK. And so that's how we help finding the solution, which is to end the burning and the extraction of fossil fuels to be able to meet net zero. Just Stop Oil has now hung up the high vis, but it's after we're celebrating this victory that got adopted by every political party except the Conservatives. But Labour made it part of its manifesto and it's now policy.
That's really good.
Yeah, no, just dig it. We're a nature-based solutions charity, so sort of saving the planet is kind of what we try and be part of. I think for Earth Day, every year we have a calendar of sort of bounce points, if you like, in the year, and this year's no different. So we'll be launching a fundraiser specifically around Earth Day. It'll be on our socials. We'll be inviting our sort of community, if you like, to sort of take part and raise some money. It's one of those things everyone can get behind and do something useful.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, everyone needs to put in their own effort. But I think to be a climate or earth activist, it comes with a lot of challenges. What has inspired you both to be part of this?
For me, so I was born in 94. So if you're a millennial or a Gen Z, you grew up with the climate crisis.
Yeah.
And for me, it was the realization that no one's coming to save us. You just see that in the government's inaction, and it's all down to grassroots campaigns or charitable organizations to get the job done because our leaders are not protecting us. So I think for me, it was that realization that actually people have the power, and to take that power back, we all have a part to play in this. We can't just be a bystander.
Yeah, I think my journey is very different, but I was in the corporate world for many years, but I've always loved the countryside. I grew up in the countryside, and I think it was an article I read in The Guardian a few years ago that said since the 70s, and I'm older than you, I remember the 70s, and it was since the 70s, something like over 70% of all wild things on the planet have disappeared. Everything from insects to fish to everything. And it was one of those jaw-dropping moments. I couldn't quite take it all in. And it's all due to airports and urban sprawl and pesticides and loss of habitat and pollution, all the usual things. And it just ate away at me. And I started listening, I started tuning in to the right sort of podcasts and programs. And the thing that tipped it over for me was I was at a really lovely dinner, and the guest speaker was a climate scientist, Professor Emily Schuckberg from Cambridge. And she was quite unusual for a scientist in that she was incredibly articulate and very, very, very good at communicating. And she gave it to this audience sort of both barrels about the melting ice caps. And it doesn't take much imagination to understand what's going to happen when these trillions of tons of water enter into the sea. And she'd been studying it for 10 years or something. And from there I got involved with the London Business School and made the decision there and then to sort of retire from my corporate job because I felt the urgent need to do something. I didn't know what at that time because I'm not a earth scientist, I'm not a soil hydrologist, or I thought how can I transport whatever skills I have into into the sort of nature-based world and the environmental action. And eventually, within 6 months, I discovered Just Dig It, and they're an amazing organisation. So I was able to, and they were very clear how I could help them. So I build awareness. I do things like this. I build partnerships, some fundraising, all sorts of bits and pieces, really. One of 2 people in the UK. So I have my work cut out, but I absolutely love it, because I think for one of the few, when you have a clear purpose in what you do, it makes such a difference to your energy levels. And when you're really passionate about what you're doing, it really makes a difference.
I think what you're saying is really relatable, because I had that feel. I knew I wanted to do something.
Yeah.
I've always been growing up like climate aware. Went vegetarian when I was 14, started donating to Greenpeace when I was 16, but I thought I didn't have the credentials to be an activist until I went to a Just Stop Oil talk and heard the facts. And I was like, I know this, but what can we do about this?
Yeah.
And all they said was just like, just sign up, do a non-violence training, sign up for action. And for me, it was like, they're giving me a solution. They're holding out a hand and I can just grab it and go for it. And that sense of purpose and community
100%.
came off the back of that.
That's the other thing, is the community you find. Like, I've left the media industry largely, and all my sort of communities there, but I've discovered these armies of people, really smart, interesting people doing amazing work in all different spheres of environment, whether it's direct action or legal assistance or, proper scientific research, or just plain, let's solve this, let's do this, and getting on with the hard work of repairing the planet. And it is really comforting, actually. I've got over a lot of my eco-anxiety, because there are so many people leaning in, and it's only getting stronger, in my view.
Mm-hmm.
It's good that you talk about eco-anxiety, because that's like one of the things I wanted to ask. What there's like the sense of dread and like eco-anxiety sometimes stops people from acting. How do you feel people can channel that like energy into something more positive and put it into action, or supporting organizations that do something?
Go for it.
Okay. I think definitely eco-anxiety is a real thing, and I think particularly for younger people who haven't necessarily experienced a world that hasn't got this existential problem that is questionable at the moment for some people, that we're going to solve it. And I think that must be very, very difficult. My only experience was when I was learning about all this, when I, as I said, I got out of the corporate world and started reading avidly. Felt like I'd done a sort of another degree. I've got a shelf load of books and watched loads of podcasts and videos and so on. And the more I learned, the more panicked I became, because there's some incredible books out there, but boy, are they depressing when you articulate what is going wrong, what has gone wrong, and the depths of the problems that the problem's facing. So I now, my solution has been to A, get involved, B, not read the bad stuff. I feel I know how bad it is, and I concentrate on the solutions now, and I feel grateful whenever I meet someone else doing something amazing in this direction. So I concentrate on the solutions rather than the problems. And I'm no psychologist, but it really helped me because it is very easy to feel despair when you watch the news or listen to politicians talk or hear the oil companies produce their annual results or something. There's always something they think, well, this isn't moving fast enough. It's depressing. But I think concentrate on the positive. People find it much more engaging to get involved with hope and positivity and optimism than all the doom and gloom that you hear around, and there's plenty of that. So try and stay positive, try and get involved. Those would be the two things, and listen to the good stuff, because there is plenty.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I think hope comes out of action, and you get more and more anxious if you stay inactive and you get stuck in that loop of doom and gloom. And yeah, it is that bad. It is horrible what's happening out there. But that sense of hope and positivity, I think, for me as well, like I draw it from being a person of action. And, not every campaign might be successful, but at least you would have done something. And I also lean on my community quite a lot. And from that community, you get to meet other like-minded people or other communities who also do incredible things, and it might not be exactly what you're doing, but you're all working together without that same common goal. And I remember learning at school about the hole in the ozone layer, and learning that as a child, you can't even begin to comprehend like how bad this is. And then you've got some of the media telling you like, oh, it's all gonna be fine, and then other media outlets tell you like, well, no, we're all screwed anyway, so might as well carry on business as usual, right? And yeah, finding those pockets of positivity and reminding yourself that like in desperate, dire times, humans tend to lean towards good and towards doing the right thing.
Yeah.
We're perfectly capable of solving this crisis. It might not be your generation, my generation, it might be the next generation, but we are setting the groundwork to turn this around. And I draw a lot of hope from that. Yeah.
I think that's like really good to hear that you guys say that, because that's what we do at Smiley News. Like we try and do like solution focused, like positive stories. So we cover people that are actually doing the actions and stuff. So it's like not just like, oh, here's like a really bad problem and like, you know, life sucks. It's like, no, these are the people that are changing it, putting effort into like making the world like better for all of us. And I think that's the thing, the environment and like the earth like unifies like everyone. And people sometimes just come at it from like, oh, like it's really hot this summer, like, and or like all the tech companies are using water for AI and stuff, and it's just like, no, you know, like it will also impact the foods that we have access to. It will impact like the global south like quite massively. And a lot of people don't see that perspective. It's just like, how does climate change or how does the environment impact me, when it's like, no, it impacts everyone, every living thing, how we develop as a society. So it's like really good that you guys have like noticed that. I kind of wanted to like talk to you guys about how you think the average person interacts with the environment. Do you feel like people like I guess I see my family as like the average person, like, you know, we recycle, we donate our clothes if we don't need it, but like sometimes outside of that we don't do like more, when I think there is more that we can do. So what do you guys think like the average person can do that's like a bit more?
I think, it's essential to recycle. It's essential to write petitions, demonstrate, get involved in whatever way you can. Maybe consider looking at the way you consume food as well. That also has a significant impact. If you look at, for example, I think agriculture represents a quarter of global emissions, for example. So if you're eating local, eating less meat, all those things are linked. And you're right, it's important to connect those dots. I think, all those things the ordinary person should do. But I also get that the system that we live under is keeping us in this cycle of crisis after crisis. So when you're struggling to find a decent paying job, struggling to put food on the table, struggling to pay your rent, struggling to still make enough time to spend with your loved ones, this is business as usual. This is profitable to those companies, and it makes it so much harder for the ordinary person to actually take that extra step and go a little bit further. From my perspective, I'm not asking everyone to go out there, get arrested, be in direct action, but I really do believe that we all have a part to play that goes beyond recycling, for example. And that is, getting involved in initiatives, getting involved in community, mutual aid groups, or just, going a little bit further than that baseline.
Yeah,
I 100% agree. I think there's something everyone can do. But I echo your thought that actually a lot of people are just trying to keep the trains running like in their lives. They've got busy lives and they don't feel necessarily it's their problem. And this is why we need political leadership and we need corporate leadership. But in everyone's life, you can make some differences that are very, very effective. I've learned only quite recently that reducing meat, particularly beef, is incredibly effective in terms of carbon and land use and so on. And as you say, agriculture, transport and oil and gas account for something like 75-80% of all emissions. So something in each of those sectors. Eat more plants, less meat. It doesn't have to give up or anything, but just reduce. It makes a huge difference. In transportation, maybe walk, cycle, whatever. Get an electric car or get a hybrid car. Take less journeys, maybe one or two less flights. It's not a big imposition. And then, of course, in oil and gas, is everyone switching to green energy? I can't understand why people wouldn't just do that, because oil prices are pretty much the same. So I don't know why. That's a very simple thing to do as well. A lot of the other things do start to cost people money. Solar panels we were talking about earlier, heat pumps, all great stuff, but not everyone can possibly afford them. So again, but there are so many things. There's an app called Better Century, and you can do like a test of what your lifestyle is like, and it's everything from insulation to what food you eat and how you travel and the sort of habits you have. And they don't represent a sacrifice. This is a thing, and I think possibly what's missing from all this is a vision of how great life could be with abundant, clean, cheap energy. It's seen as a sacrifice or a sort of denial of your human rights to consume what you like. But actually, there's a perfectly good life to be had out there, making some subtle changes. And if we do make the transformation, then you have got this vision of abundant, free, clean energy, which I think is the goal. And then everything becomes possible, I think.
Absolutely. And I think, for example, Just Stop Oil, one of the main criticism that we get is like, what, you want to just stop oil? We're going to go back to the Middle Ages. And it's exactly what you're saying. We're not. Renewable energies is where it's at in the long run. And that is, of course, if the government stops subsidizing fossil fuel companies and invests in electrical grids and in solar panels and wind farms and tidal and everything, it is cheaper in the long term. And that vision of abundance, I want that. I want.
And often doing the sort of green thing is cheaper, just turning the thermostat down a degree, closing doors, switching lights off, the things you sort of do, but a lot of people just don't. Shorter showers, whatever. I mean, just little things make a huge difference, and they are inevitably going to save you some money, which in these straitened times I think is really important to consider as well.
I think it's so great that there's like little acts of resistance that you can do yourselves.
Yeah.
But do you think it's quite hard when there's like, I guess like a lot of the power is with like the corporations? That's why like at COP they usually have like a lot of businesses attend, because it's like if they were built from the like ground up on sustainable practices, then it's like it would just be instilled in the way we act, rather than us being like, okay, I actively need to change my heat system in my house to be like geothermal or something like that. Yeah, I think it exposes what a sham the COP conferences have become. I mean, they started in '95, so I think there's almost 30 COP conferences now, and yet the global subsidies for fossil fuels, for example, has increased by like, I think it's 1.3 trillion pounds now or something insane like that. And you've got more lobbyists at those conferences than you've got environmental representatives or activists. So they do make the job a little bit harder for us, but I think people need to remember how much agency and power we have as individuals as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, I last ran a company sort of 5-6 years ago, but even then people were interested in initiatives that were supporting the environment. So it becomes part of your employer brand. It's not enough just to say we're going to reduce our emissions. If you want to attract really good talent into your organization, you have to be doing something about the issues that they care about. So I think you can't ignore the corporate world. I mean, I think they really hold the key, given the money that's involved, given the consumption patterns, the products they produce, the services they produce. But what I see is a lot of businesses really starting to move the needle on this, because they can see regulation coming down the track, a bit like accounting regulation. You're going to be exposed if you're not reducing your emissions, or you don't have a clear plan to reduce them. So I do see a directional change from, say, 5 years ago, when it was like, can't be bothered or not me. I do see a lot of very, very serious companies who are very, very serious about reducing their emissions. And that can only be a good thing, because it will have a net effect, we hope, on things going forwards. But yeah, you're right. Individuals do have agency, and voting, demonstrating, talking to your local council. I live in Westminster. They're incredible. They have a very active climate group, and they're doing all sorts of incredible initiatives. And there's no reason why every council couldn't do that as well. Because I think it really is a voting issue now. I think politicians are wrong to keep it down the agenda. I think people are very, very concerned about the environment, and it should be raised up on all agendas.
So, like, as we've been talking about, like, the theme for 2025 World Earth Day is about sustainable and green energy. What do you think, other than the challenges we've talked about, are stopping people, countries, organizations from switching from fossil fuels to like more sustainable wind, type of energies?
I think, yeah, once again, I think the main obstacles are from the people at the top. I think 2/3 at the study, there was a study in The Guardian that said that 2/3 of the British public want to see more in terms of climate action, which goes back to what Stuart was saying. So the main obstacle for that are those was it the wind farm bans, because it's an aesthetic problem, or the fact that like farmers can't turn some of their fields into solar panel fields and things like that, and also the fact that those things should be made cheaper to be more attractive to the usual consumer. We were saying earlier that heat pumps, for example, are not everyone can afford the investment that it takes to be able to install a heat pump and make that switch. So I think the government, in its responsibility to protect us, should make those things possible and affordable for ordinary people.
Yeah.
I think that's right, and I think there is a lot of inertia in the system, because people know what works in their businesses and their organizations, and so it's quite hard to really change that. And I think it is really, we are in a system which mitigates against a lot of this, and so you feel yourself pushing against, contrary to the sort of rules of the system. The oil and gas industries simply don't want this to happen. They don't see the profits. It's not that they perhaps don't want to, it's just that it's not a financially sound choice for them, and they have shareholders and fiduciary responsibilities. But what's been so disappointing is that they're not moving quicker. Some are, some aren't. And I think, unfortunately, the Ukraine-Russia war has spiked energy prices, and of course they've seen record profits. So they're thinking, well, why would we turn away from that? So I think that's come at a very unfortunate time for the transition. However, I think it is already started, and it is unstoppable. So it's a question of whether the big oil majors want to be part of, whether they're energy companies long term or whether they're oil and gas companies, and they will therefore have a much shorter life ahead of them. Some of them are transitioning, and I don't have any sympathy for them, but to transition an organization like that into something quite different, building a wind farm or solar panels, is very different from drilling for oil. And they have a lot of expertise in one thing and not a lot of expertise in the other. So it probably looks extremely difficult to pivot giant multinational companies. But I still think they've had way long enough to think about it and plan for it. And the direction of travel, I think, is now really obvious and clear. So I think they're either doubling down and saying we're not doing it, or they're still like, is it Total Energy? I think they really are trying to bridge to a sustainable energy future. They're going via gas as a sort of interim fuel and then into renewables longer term. But I think it's not reasonable to say, it's not realistic to say no more oil tomorrow, because everything would fall apart. But we do need a clear a rapid transition plan. And that means building for the future as well as adapting for people's jobs, livelihoods, and technology and all the rest of it. So it's not easy, but we should really be moving quicker, in my view.
And like with what you said, like I think like education is sometimes like at the crux of all of this. So how do you think we can integrate environmentalism and awareness for future generations so they're like more equipped than we? I feel like for my generation at least, it was kind of like we were like handed the problem when it was happening, rather than like seeing it like, okay, like it's going to be a problem, we need to start thinking now.
Well, I think a lot of environmental thinking is feeding into school curricula. I'm afraid I'm too old to know what's going on in schools anymore. But I do, whenever I talk to people, we've been commissioned at Just Dig It to write children's books and help with curricula and various things. I've been down to a couple of schools because I've been invited to give a talk. So I think there's a lot of appetite for it. I don't know how you embed it into curriculums because they're already very packed for children. But I do feel it is starting to happen. You see so many wonderful things occurring from schools, picking up litter, beach cleans, fundraising, whatever. But I think it is really important to get it into the learning. I do also see, certainly from our organizational point of view, so many more students at degree level choosing environmental sciences and a sort of that path as opposed to maybe engineering or accountancy or something. I think people are genuinely interested in forging their career in this area, and that's got to be very good news.
Yeah.
I think, education is key. Everything starts with education. And I think a few years ago, I don't know if it's still the case, but in 2022, some of the GCSE's curriculum was talking about the positive aspects of climate change, which is insane. There was some stuff like, we'll be able to grow grapes and make our own wine in the UK and things like that. It's like, no. We need to tell the next generation the truth about what's really happening, and that will make them, go towards a more constructive path of environmental studies, and realizing that, okay, there's a job that needs to be done that's been so nicely passed on to us from 50, 70 years ago. But education is key. And I think that's not just at a school level. I think any kind of program that in the community, even the elderly, as well as, a very broad outreach in terms of education is essential. Once you know the facts and once you know the truth, you can't look away, and you will naturally try to find a solution and work towards that.
Yeah, and I'd just add also education clearly is key, but there's also a lot of misinformation out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when you hear people arguing, should I get an electric car or should I invest in ethical funds or something? The point is we need to do all of that. We need to do everything. It's not what's right and what's wrong. And it's very dispiriting to hear two passionate environmentalists argue about one solution over another. The point is that if you look at Project Drawdown, there's 150 things we need to do. We need to do all of them. So it doesn't really matter if you want to focus on one area, go ahead. But we do need to pull all the levers and press all the buttons.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what do you think with new tech and green tech is coming out constantly? Have you guys heard of any innovative or really interesting green innovations?
Yes. Yeah. No, I've got it. So one of my heroes is a guy called Dale Vince, and he's
slow marched with us. He's a cool guy.
Yeah, he's an incredible entrepreneur, and with a very interesting take on life. And he founded Ecotricity, had his first windmill going in the 90s. But recently, I listened to his talk. He's written an amazing book called Manifesto. But he's a committed vegan, and he's recently discovered a way to convert the grass that is grown and normally fed to cattle. He can convert protein and energy out of the grass, just like the cow does, and it turns into beef, but instead of it turns into human food and energy. And I think that's the sort of inspirational innovation that we need a lot more of. If you think about the land use in the UK alone, something like 50% is devoted to crops for cows and cows. And if you could just change all that, it would provide a lot more food, good food, ethical, sustainable food for humans and energy. And you could then restore a lot more environment. So that's the sort of tech, new tech, which I find incredibly exciting. He's also talking about battery-powered short-haul flights, which again I think would be transformational, because once you get these things going, someone else will come over the top and make it better. And so yeah, that would be my number one.
Okay, those sound really interesting, especially the cow thing.
Yeah, incredible. Who knew?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. He's a cool guy. I think one of the innovations I wouldn't be so enthusiastic about is carbon capture contraptions, which, the last budget from Labour decided to invest over £2.2 billion into carbon capture contraptions. I feel like this is a lie. Those carbon capture contraptions are to recycle fossil fuels, and 70% of them end up back being fossil fuels, being oil again. This is greenwashing. So we need to focus instead on those actual tried and true, tried and tested solutions that are out there. Yes, solar, wind, tidal, but also, really out of the box thinking, using what we already have, grass, for example, land, fields, into something that will benefit everyone.
And to bring it to a close, what motivates both of you to do the work that you do?
For me, it's, I don't know, it feels almost like a moral duty to do something. Once you know the facts, as we know, we've had a pretty almost similar journey into that realization of this is happening. I've got a part to play in this. Once you know the fact, you can't look away. You can't be a bystander. And I'm in a fortunate position where I don't have any descendants, so I was able to take more risks in that respect. I've got friends with families who are not able to go down the direct action route, for example, but they will help in whatever capacity they can, being donating, signing petitions, legal support, picking people up from police stations, all of it. It's incredible how much work there is to do. And what motivates me is, I think of my little cousins, I think of my friends' kids, and I'm like, I don't want these kids to grow up with half of the population of the world dead. That's the estimate by the Institute of Actuaries. If we continue down the path we're on right now, and this institute, they do those predictions for insurance companies, and they're the top dogs out there when it comes to statistics. If we go down the path that we're on right now, between 2070 and 2090, 4 billion people will die. Might be alive then. I don't want to see that, and I certainly don't want my little cousins or my friends' kids to witness half of the world population dead.
Yeah, I think it's this idea of, I think we've sort of lost it in a way, but it's in almost all religious teaching. It says it's better to give than to receive. And we live in a culture where we receive all the time. And certainly what I've discovered is that when you do something for the pleasure of giving something. If I see it as giving back to the planet in some way, every little thing I do with our charity, Just Dig It, I feel it is giving something back as opposed to taking something away. And so I always try and see it through that lens, because you do get a warm feeling of doing something useful. I mean, so many people are doing jobs which are necessary, but they don't get much joy out of it, and they don't feel they're achieving anything. But I feel the opposite. I feel we're achieving a lot, and I feel by giving you get an incredible sense of empowerment. That's my motivation. I'm lucky I've had my career, so it's not like I'm starting out on my career where I have to make some tough choices. We have to earn a living, you have to get by and make some decisions. So I'm lucky I'm at the other end of that. But I do feel a slight moral, quite a strong moral case to say that we should be doing this. And if you're in a position to do it, why not? Because it makes you feel good. It makes you feel good to take some action and do something, as opposed to sit there and not do anything and feel paralyzed by fear or dread. It's much better to do something. It doesn't have to be much, but do something. It makes you feel a lot better.
I think, what you're saying is we live in a culture of exponential growth and extraction. But when, you do the opposite, it's incredible. That sense of empowerment that you talked about is I've never felt more brave. I still get terrified, but I feel brave because I know that I'm doing something, and that is such a drive, I think, for what you do. What we do is just, it's incredible, that feeling that you get of giving back and not doing something as a transactional thing. You're just doing it because it's the right thing to do. Yeah.
So it's really good to hear from both of you and how you both look after the environment and campaign for the planet from both your different sides. So thank you for listening and watching this episode of Speak Up by Smiley Movement, and I hope the panelists today have inspired you to look after the environment, put energy into the earth and the actions that you do.